friends. We're glad you're here.
Welcome to the Present Matters podcast. I am your co-host, Andrew.
And I'm your co-host, Kassie. And we have a very special guest with us today, our mom, Andrea. Do you want to introduce yourself, Mom?
Hi, I'm Andrea Pope. I've been teaching fourth grade for 7 years now, and before that I had 20 years in early childhood education, so I'm very passionate about education and children.
It's a good intro. And today our episode is going to be on how the education system currently stands, how it needs to be reworked, and the teacher's perspective on how to do so. And so with that, I kind of want to start off in the beginning, back in like the 100s. What was the education like? No, I'm joking. What's the history like of our current system? Are either of you familiar?
Vaguely, I think I learned some during my master's program, but I honestly can't give you any specifics.
Okay. Because I am not a teacher, so I don't have any educational background of teaching at all. But I feel like I remember reading somewhere that our current system is based on mid-1800s, something or other. Like it's really old.
Yeah, like very little has changed since then in terms of how we structure our education system,
Which is kind of wild to think about, because just contrasting life back then versus how it is now. Just not even in school, but like psychology of what we know about children and just the human brain compared to then and now. It's weird that there hasn't been like any move to change anything.
Yeah.
There is a shift now, though, giving more opportunity for counseling. It's not like a taboo thing anymore, and getting in that social emotional piece and, more life skills starting at the elementary age, which is a plus.
That's true. Yes. I will recognize that for sure. And I know I preface this every time I talk about it, that like Megan is not a teacher. She's just like a museum educator, and she just works with kids and teaches them art and whatnot. But even with that, there's a lot of, you guys will know what the acronym is. It's like that emotional exercise you do to make sure that everyone's...
Mindfulness?
Yeah, it's like mindfulness. But it's like making sure that the kids feel welcome and that they can express themselves and they can...
SEL, social emotional learning, SEL.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. I knew it was something, and I was like, there's an acronym for it, and I don't remember what it's called. Yeah, so like they do that, and like that's not something you or I did in school. I don't think any of us did that in school. Yeah. Like,
counselor when I was in school was you go and talk about, what you want to do in life, not like it was career counseling. It wasn't your mental health counseling.
And isn't that okay? So this might be a hot take, but one of the reasons why the education system hasn't changed is because if you create a smarter population and a more well-prepared population, that you won't be as accepting to the abuses of the workforce.
Okay, so I actually wrote like a whole paper on this for one of my master's classes and did like a ton of like research for it.
I did not know that. I'm excited.
Yeah. There's like a ton of evidence that shows that like the education system was built on the idea that they wanted to create educated but like not fully educated citizens
just that enough would basically to function in a workforce.
Yeah, that they would just like fall in line, and like they used to have more of an emphasis on like patriotism and like here's how you conform to like societal norms. And yeah, there's like a lot of evidence that shows that a lot of that hasn't really changed, that's still what we're doing. We're not teaching kids to think for themselves. We're teaching them how to do what they're told and follow whatever.
And this can actually be the perfect segue to how the system currently is. And one of those issues of the education system just educating you enough to be functioning in a workforce, I'm assuming one of those data points that you have to back that up is the way school districts work and how they're funded, and how in lower income zip codes they are underfunded. Yeah. You can't see, but our mom is a teacher in one of those districts, and it's like systematically wrong that just because you don't make as much money means you don't get as good of an education. But that is like the foundation of the US education system.
Right. Yeah. Mom, go ahead. You have thoughts.
Yeah. Let your thoughts free.
Well, they say that education should be equal for all students, but what you just said absolutely negates that, because even where we are, the district right next to my district has a huge military population, and they are the highest paying district in our state. My district is one of the lowest paying districts, as I think Cass, yours is too.
Yeah.
But it's based on the property taxes. So if you're living in an area that is more affluent, then that means that the property taxes are higher, which means that school district gets more money for education. Whereas we teach in a district where we be broke and our money is very, very limited. So getting the access to the same things for all students is impossible based on the way our education system is funded. Which also leads me into why the hell is our government involved in our educational system at the national level, when I feel it should be at the most the state level, but more district. Like people that are there isn't a national school board. People in Washington, the Secretary of Education, at this point, I do believe he actually was involved in education. He was a teacher and a principal and all that. But right now, that's not the norm. Typically, it's somebody from who knows where that has no idea about the educational system, has never been in a classroom, and they're the ones that are making our laws. How is that right? Other than that goes with keeping the students being uniform and conforming to managing in the workforce. Does that make sense?
So to build off of what you were saying earlier about the money disparity, I think it's also relevant to point out that also affects teacher pay. So usually the lower income schools are harder to teach at. Like the kids don't have the support at home a lot of times. Those kids are just they need more from teachers. So it's harder to work there. But then you get paid less because, again, the schools have less funding. So it's like, it's more work, you're doing more, but then you also get less pay for it. So, which obviously teacher pay isn't like the most important thing, but it is important. It is important that teachers,
It
it's
absolutely
like the driving
is.
incentive. Yeah.
It's a huge incentive. Yeah, passion. Like, I think the days of saying teachers do it for the students is gone.
That's just dumb.
Yeah. Well, and I think this started before the pandemic, but the pandemic definitely clinched that. Yeah, no. I mean, I love my students. I love what I do, but I'm done going above and beyond and doing all of this ridiculous stuff that they asked me to do that I can't do within my contract hours because I'm not getting paid for it. And they keep building more administrative positions that make 2 and 3 times what I make. And that then takes away from the teacher pay budget. I'm going to get on a tangent.
No. Yeah, no, it's a good tangent to go on because I think this is more of like a mass scale movement in just I'm not sure if it's the global workforce, but the U.S. workforce, definitely. Like, we're seeing a lot more unions pop up. I feel like there was a shift that happened slowly over time, where as people were being paid less for doing more work, very slowly, so it was kind of unnoticeable. It got to a point where we were kind of tricked into thinking that you need to work because of the thing you're producing, and you need to just be okay with what you're producing. And it's not about the money. It should be about the thing you're producing for me. And that's a little different for teachers because like it's government run unless you're a private education teacher. But it's weird that it got to a point where it was ever you teach because of the students, and that should justify the devaluing of your pay.
That's like, to me, saying
why is
that
it teachers can't make a living off of what they do? Just they should struggle and starve because they love teaching children.
That's like saying that Elon Musk invented the Tesla because it's a cool car. Like,
he didn't even invent the
bazillions
Tesla,
of dollars. Well, yeah, well, you know what I mean. Like, however that worked out, he was not in it for it's a cool car. He was in it for the bazillion dollars that he now has. And if you think about it, in all honesty, none of these people, even these professional athletes that get paid ridiculous amounts of money to play a sport, like, they all got where they are because of people like Cass and I. If they did not have that educational background, they would probably be who knows where, but not making a gazillion dollars playing football.
Yeah, I see a lot of good change happening though. And there was like the whole strikes a couple years ago at this point, right? Or was it just like two or 3 years ago? It was before the pandemic. The pandemic's a blur. But like there was all those teacher strikes and there was some good that came out of it. I don't think enough good. Just overall on a workforce level, I think we're heading in a good direction. Not that it's going to be easy to get where we want to be, but
I think the frustration is that, like, we do the strikes, we do the, like, marching on the Capitol, all of that stuff, but it's like it gets us teeny tiny progress. And as teachers who are, like, in the classroom on the front lines, air quotes around front lines, like, doing this day in and day out, we're the ones that are like, the change isn't happening fast enough. Like, we see kids struggling and falling behind, and we see, teachers are quitting left and right. Even so, 2 days ago, Friday, we had a teacher say he's not coming back next semester. We started our break and he was like, I'm done. So teachers are quitting constantly because the kids are nuts. The kids aren't getting what they need. The teachers aren't getting what they need. Like, the education system is broken, and the teachers and the kids are the ones that are suffering because of it. But we're the ones that don't have, like, a lot of power to do anything about it because it's problems that are coming from higher ups. Like Mom said, it's like the government, and it's even school districts. Like, the people at the school district level a lot of times have no actual educational experience, but they're the ones that are making the laws. They're the ones that are making the policies and telling us what to teach, what not to teach. And it's like the people that actually have degrees in this are not the ones that are being trusted to make decisions about education. Like, I have a degree in this. I went to school for this. You hired me to do this job. So let me do this job and stop trying to micromanage me. It's frustrating for us.
I have a question for you then.
Okay.
Would you take one of those roles?
See, I feel like my answer should be yes, because I should want to, but I've just seen so much corruption at those higher levels that I don't think, me personally, that I could handle that. Like, it would break me, I think, to be in that position and see all of the other bullshit that's happening around me and, like, just have to be one of them. I just would feel like I alone wouldn't be able to, like, make the change I wanted. So I think if I want the change, my answer should be yes, I would want to take that position, but I just know that I don't. I don't think I could handle it, which is probably why there's not more change happening, because teachers want to teach. A lot of us don't want those upper level positions.
There's a lot of and I've seen this not just in teachers, but a lot of fields where they want to do the work because that's what they love. And so it's the people who don't necessarily care about the work and maybe have want a little more control over their life and power for whatever one reason or the other, and they work their way up and make changes that they feel are right, not necessarily based on, they're supposed to be a public servant and do as the public wants, but it's never about that. And so it's just the teachers are stuck that want to teach.
So I actually have a friend that just recently finished her master's program, whatever the, like, principal licensure program was. Mm-hmm. And she, like, wanted to be an admin and, like, go through that path. And then she went through the program and she was like, I don't know if I want to do it anymore, because the stuff that she was learning in the program and the stuff she was hearing from other people that were in the program, she was like, this is not, like, what I want. She was like, I think this would break my spirit. All of these people that don't actually care about teachers, they don't actually care about the kids. They just want the higher pay and the control. And she's like, I don't know if I could do that. But she would be amazing at it. So it's like, it's sad because there are people that do want to do that, but then they're like, I don't want to be the only one that's fighting for this change that we want, you know?
Well, and it's funny that you kind of say, Cass, that you think that you don't want to do that at this point in your life. I probably would have said the same thing when I was your age. But I had a conversation with my husband and mom just a couple weeks ago. And I said, when I retire, I really am interested in getting on our local school board and trying to make a difference. And of course, Art said, well, you're just going to rock the boat. And I said, probably, but I'm hoping that I can rock the boat in a way that benefits students and staff, because I teach in a small district and the board and our superintendent are pretty good, I would say. Our superintendent is a product of the district, went there, taught there, was an administrator. So he is very vested. And I think that makes a big difference. But I am an advocate for students more than staff. And I think that there needs to be more people on the school boards with that educational background rather than, hey, I'm a businessman and I might want to run for office one day, so let me get on the school board because that looks good to the community that, hey, I was on the school board, when you really don't have a clue what is going on in education or in the district or any of that. So the thought of retiring and running for the school board is in the back of my mind. I know I have 10 plus years before I can be at that point. But right now, it's something that I'm considering.
So for, say, the principal, how is the principal hired? What do they have to go through to be hired to be a principal?
So usually, I think it depends on the place too. But usually they have to be a teacher for some period of time. But it's 3 years. And a lot of them will teach for 3 years and then go into admin. And depending on the level of school you're at, so elementary or secondary, sometimes you'll have to go into a dean position first. And then from dean, you go into an assistant principal. And then from assistant principal, you go into a principal position. But the actual hiring is usually a committee of, at least in my experience, of teachers, other admin at the school, and then district level people, since it's a principal. So it's a committee, but the district level people typically have the final say of who the principal is.
And those district level people are the ones that you're talking about, kind of, right, Mom?
What do you mean?
Higher ups that are not necessarily at the school level, but the people deciding what's going on in the district, the school board, or don't the...
Currently, my school board has one retired teacher on it and she was a secretary for, 30 years in the district. So we have two people that have some knowledge of the educational system, and I think that makes a difference. But it does, the school board, the committees in our district, they make the recommendation to the school board that says we nominate whoever to be principal or assistant principal at this school. And I have never seen where the school board says, no, this is the committee. They've gone through all the hoops and they're going to be the principal. It's just checking that box.
So I actually, at the school I'm at currently, the year before I was there was a situation where the committee made a list of their top 3 candidates and said, this is the one we want, but if they say no, here's our other 2. And I'm a little unclear if it was the school board or the district level administrators. Someone higher up at the district level chose someone that was not on their top 3 list at all. So that caused a lot of issues. So it does happen.
So from your perspective, what would be the way to solve this? I agree that having more people with teacher experience is good, and it's definitely a necessity, because if you're not, how can you even have any say on how schools are run if you've never been in that system? What, aside from that obvious answer, how do we get to that obvious answer being a legitimate solution instead of just a pipe dream?
So I have thoughts. My biggest thought is around school boards specifically, because I could rant about school boards forever. I am perfectly fine with the idea of there being a school board. I think it's awesome to have community members be involved in like what's happening in schools. However, I don't think school boards should have the amount of power they have. Typically, school boards can override like a superintendent. They have the most power typically in the district. And again, like Mom said, these are typically people that don't have educational experience. They're businessmen. They're people that want to run for office later. They're people that just randomly have strong opinions about education. So I just don't think that those should be the people that have the most power in the district. Like the school board can be there to give their opinions, to offer whatever, but I don't think they should be like the end all be all of what happens in a district. That is my personal opinion of something that could relatively easily be shifted and say school boards still exist, but they don't have the amount of power that they have.
So the school board running is in more of an advisory capacity.
Yes.
And maybe more, well, the superintendent is supposed to work in conjunction with the school board, but we've seen, especially lately, that that doesn't always happen, and the school board can railroad a superintendent. Mm-hmm. But I think getting rid of the national power for education is a first step, because how can you at a national level know what students in Mississippi need as opposed to students in California? So not having that executive control over our educational system and just leaving it to the states. And I'm still kind of iffy on even that, but at least the state is a smaller level rather than, at the national level. And the only thing I would think would be easier at the national level is if there is more uniformity, and I'm sorry, I might be getting off topic, more uniformity across the nation. And I'm thinking specifically of, like, you both as military brats, you were lucky and we went from overseas to Colorado, and this is where we've been ever since. But moving from state to state, and especially as you get into high school, you move from Colorado and you go to Wisconsin, and the expectations to graduate in Wisconsin are totally different than what they are in Colorado. So now you're behind because you moved because your family had to move due to military. Like, that's not fair either. So things like that come up far too frequently. Even dealing with the elementary level, I hear things like that.
And so I have some comments on that. I have heard this a lot. I know there's and I don't want this to devolve into like a political discussion, but I mean, the education system is kind of political, as much as it really shouldn't be. There's like different kinds of people. There's people who are all for like the federal government, and there's people who are like, but we need this to be more of like bring back like more states' rights kind of deal. And I understand what you're or like your reasoning for kind of lessening the federal control over the education system. What I worry about with that is states like Florida and Texas, where they're just like, okay, well, if that's the case, we're just going to absolutely demolish our public education system and privatize all of it. And congrats, you have states of brainwashed children of whatever agenda they want to push. Not saying they're pushing one or the other, but that they have a history of pushing their own kind of things that they want their population to be like.
Good
and
point.
So it's removing that. I can see that just being an issue.
Well, but really, aren't we trying to push more of that private education? How many people are on that bandwagon that public education is a thing of the past and it should all be privatized? Isn't that one of the movements currently going?
Is it? I'm not sure.
I have heard a lot of rumblings.
Yes. However, I think the reason it's not happening is because of the federal government saying, like, no, public education is still a thing. We're still doing that. I think in the previous administration, what's that called? The person, whoever's in charge at the federal level.
Secretary of Education that knew nothing about education.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think her agenda was pushing really hard towards we should privatize. But which is another thing that is frustrating about having a national level education, whatever, because with each administration, their agenda and what they push for education changes. And it's like, okay, you politically think this way, so now you're going to decide the whole nation needs to do that. And I think that's a problem. So I think this is why change in education is so like stagnant, because there's just everybody thinks something different is what's best. And every new political party that's like in power at the time thinks something else is best. And they decide we're going to do this. And every district thinks a different thing and every state thinks a different thing. And so it's like all of these people are just saying, here's all the things that need to happen. And so none of them happen because it's just a constant pushing back and forth. So it's like, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how to change that because that's so deeply rooted in like the culture of our country and like how our country functions. I don't know how to change that, but I think that's a lot of the reason why change is not happening in education, because everyone has a different opinion of what the right answer is. And so it's like, well, no one agrees, so we're just not going to do anything.
I think I've connected a couple dots here, and I feel like there's kind of a, based on what you were saying about kind of the culture of our country and how it functions, how it's always functioned. Well, not how it's always functioned. It's been somewhat of a more recent change, meaning like the past, I think, 50 plus years or whatever. You were mentioning that the school boards are just businessmen and people that want to have something good on their record so that way they can be elected for a higher position, work their way up because they want a higher pay and they want to make changes that, you know, can positively affect their business or businesses like them or their friends. Or an issue I see with our country that I'm not sure will change anytime soon is the allowing of corporations to buy candidates.
Yes.
Taking out corporate money would remove a huge incentive for these business people to want to gain this power and this money, and like removing those incentives. I mean, there's no way to like, I can't say that and be like, that's the solution to everything, because, you know, it doesn't work that way. And while it may be beneficial, there may be unforeseen consequences, or, you know, but I do think overall it's a big issue. I'm going to compare this to a personal thing that I've done with my life is in the military, okay? In the military, you go, you're a stupid kid. They break you down. They build you back up. There's air quotations about that. And then they throw you in a dorm. There's like, here's kind of this really low pay, like pretty garbage pay. But ooh, look what I have here. You see this? This is BAH, or housing allowance. And like, ooh, what's this? This is a food allowance. You could make so much more money. You see these? You want these? You can't have them. You got to stay in the dorm for like 3 or 4 years. But then your friend Bill goes out and he got married. Whoa, he gets that money now. What? He makes like 3 times as much as I do. And so what do? You go out and you get married, which is what I did. And yeah, you make a lot more money because you get married. It's like they're not directly telling you to go get married. They're not forcing you to do anything. But when you have incentives that are greater than like the, you know, life-changing decision of getting married, like when you dangle those in front of people, they're going to go after it. And so like you can't structure it in a way where there's like blatantly obvious incentives to do the wrong things. Did that make sense? Or was that
Yes.
just okay?
Yes, it did. Yeah, and again, I think that's another, like, there's so many. The education system is not the only thing in our country that's broken. And so it's like, it almost feels like other things have to be fixed and restructured before we can even tackle the education system. But it also feels like the education system is like the most important thing, because how are we going to prepare the next generation to go out and make the changes that we want to see if the education system isn't changed? So it's like
a vicious cycle.
That's the loop that I get stuck in of like, nothing's ever going to change because it's just,
Well, and you're talking about, Andrew, the people being able, or corporations being able to buy politicians. That ties into the educational system too, only not necessarily politicians, but those big publishing corporations like Pearson, like who?
Oh my God,
that's
yes.
a
Yes.
whole other issue. Yeah.
Yeah, and you think the school, but a district school budget, okay? Part of the reason, and this is just part of the reason that the districts can't afford to pay teachers more is because they're whopping millions, literally millions of
So
dollars
much.
to those companies. And of course, I'm going to point the finger right at Pearson. It's now Savas or whatever stupid name they're under. But so they're the ones that created the standardized test for Colorado. So of course they're going to push you on our curriculum because we designed the standardized test. And I am on the committee to adopt the social studies curriculum for elementary school in my district. And the amount of money just social studies curriculum costs for a year was mind-blowing. Like, that is ridiculous. So if they're going to buy into something like this, I think it is very unfair that those big companies are making all this money off of public education.
Yeah, and it's the same kind of thing I'll say at the secondary level, but with College Board, because
I was
College
gonna
Board,
go to college. Yep.
yes, College Board owns, like they're the ones that make the college entrance exams like the SAT, but then, and they also make the AP, the advanced placement classes curriculum. And so then they're like, oh, you should buy our Springboard curriculum because it'll help prepare the kids for the test. Because guess what? We create
made
that
the
test.
test.
So
Yep.
yeah, but it's insane how much money districts pay. And it's every year. And a lot of times they make you go into a contract
Yep.
where like you have to use their
Use it for
curriculum for
so
5
many
years
years, yeah.
or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, well, now we're locked into this. And again, a lot of this curriculum is like so scripted that it's like, why are you hiring me then? Why are you hiring me, the person that's gone to school and gotten a degree, to do this if you're like, here's a script? Like, just hire a random person then. Why am I here? You know?
Yes.
It's kind of like, I mean, the requirements you need to be a substitute teacher is just like super low, like nothing to do with education, right?
High school diploma.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's essentially they're just hiring overqualified substitute teachers to read from a script.
Yes, because the district I used to teach in had Springboard and it was awful. It was like the kids were miserable, the teachers were miserable. We were like, we're not getting to do any of the stuff that we feel like is important. We're having to follow these scripts, and like it was so much work because they always said, oh, we'll make it your own. And it's like, it's so much more work to take something that's scripted and make it my teaching style than it would be for me to just create stuff with my team. But anyway, I could go on a soapbox about that forever too.
Yeah. Well, and that leads into the whole research shows that you cannot gauge a student's growth by one test. So why the hell are we given standardized tests? Why do you take one test to decide whether you know enough to get into college with the SAT or the ACT? That's stupid.
And why do we use that on teachers' like performance evaluations?
Oh, yeah. Let's
all these kids, especially, I don't know how it's like at the elementary. At the secondary level, the kids know that these tests don't matter for them. They don't. They don't affect their grade. They don't affect anything. They don't go on their record for colleges, whatever. So they don't give a crap about these tests. So they will literally sit there and tell me, oh yeah, I just guessed on every answer. Like, I don't care. And I'm like, cool. That's going to affect my performance evaluation at the end of the year, because they take those scores and add that as part of your performance evaluation as a teacher. So I'm like, these inaccurate measures of whether or not my student grows is affecting whether or not you think I'm an effective teacher.
Right.
So
that added to that, we spend all year modifying and individualizing things for students, the curriculum, everything, and then they give them a standardized test. How do you expect a student to be successful on that when all they've had all year is what's at their level? How do you expect them to perform well? It's like setting them up for failure. And then you're gauging my ability as a teacher based on the fact that this student is at a second grade level. Yes, he's in fourth grade, but he's really at a second grade level. And when you test him on fourth grade curriculum, he bombs. Well, of course he bombs. What, I mean, It's really ridiculous.
And it's the back and forth too of like they constantly tell teachers, make sure you're differentiating and
Yes.
make sure you're doing stuff for the higher kids, but also accommodating for the lower kids, and make sure you're blah, 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 all this stuff. But then they're like, okay, I give everybody the same exact test.
Yep.
Like, what?
Yes.
But you, what?
Yes. And then the percentage, I was just talking about this last week with our superintendent, like the percentage of success is, I think we were talking specifically in math, in the state of Colorado is like 27%. At the elementary, well, no, wait, I'm not sure what level it was at because all levels were in this meeting. But so how can you say that these standardized tests are doing any good when the proficiency level is at 27% for the state? And I guess it doesn't matter what grade level it's at because that's ridiculous. Yeah. How is that a good thing?
Plus, we didn't take the standardized test during COVID and the world didn't implode. Everything was fine.
Yep. Do we need to hold teachers accountable? 100%. Should it be by a standardized test? No. It shouldn't even be considered part of our rubric. It shouldn't be given at all, honestly. My opinion.
Yeah.
Ooh. So many.
That was a lot of rants.
So many things. No, they were good rants. Just the only thing in my mind is like, yeah, these are, I know they're pointless, and how widely accepted and widely accessible the internet is now. Like, it was only just starting to become accessible when you and I were going through like high school, Cassandra. Like, it was still kind of nerdy to use the internet. Outside of like social media, that is. And social media was like 2 platforms. But the students know this. They're hearing this. Maybe not so much in elementary school. I'm not sure. I know my friend has twins that I think they're just started preschool, but like they're picking up things that like are just wild for their age to know. And so I wouldn't be surprised if elementary school kids are even like seeing input like this from teachers and like speaking out, because like this information's just out there and they find it and they hear it and they're like, oh yeah, it doesn't matter. Why should I care? And it's just like a feedback loop of I think a lot of why students are they're different now, and they don't respect the older generations, which I don't think inherently is a bad thing. I think the anger is misguided a lot of the time. But older generations, it was like, you need to respect your elders regardless of if they show you respect or not. Now it's more of like an equal playing field. You don't just get respect by your age, you get respect based off your character and how you treat people. And with the internet as widespread as it is, these kids are seeing adults how they truly are before we ever did. Like, adults are just them, but later on in life. Like, we are more humanized. We are not, like, as Cassandra and I talked in like the last 2 episodes of like the whole realization that your parents are just people. And you're just living your life and making shit up as you go, just like we are. Like, that's just life. That is like at the core life. We're all just making it up as we go and trying our best. And they're seeing that at a younger age, but they're seeing that in tandem with nothing but the mistakes of our past that have led up to like where we are now, whether it be legislative mistakes or it all eventually comes back to legislative mistakes, but like climate change and just the rampant misuse of social media that's like plaguing kids' minds and like warping their thoughts and how they perceive the world. And there's so much doom and gloom that they see all day, every day. Why should they care about adults? From their perspective, not ours. From theirs, it's like the world's ending. Nothing really matters. All this stuff, like, it's not necessarily the teacher's fault, but none of this matters. We're going to go off and go into the workforce and whatnot. It sucks, but like being more cognizant of their point of view, it's like, I don't imagine I would be much different. But yeah, I definitely think it's misguided, because it's like teachers like the both of you that are actually passionate and want to make that positive change. I've heard from both of you, like, there's those students that genuinely want to learn and they find value and they appreciate you as a person. They look past all the doom and gloom and whatnot. And those ones are exceptional. And but a lot of them just take it out on everyone as opposed to the people who are actually causing the problem.
Yeah, I will say though that students are more perceptive than we often give them credit for, and they can tell the teachers that genuinely care and the ones that don't. And you can see it in the way that they interact with those adults. It's, yeah, kids are more perceptive than we think they are. I don't know how else to word that. That's one of the things I love about teaching and teaching teenagers and preteens specifically, is that people have so many negative things to say about teenagers. And I'm like, there's so much more to them than we give them credit for. Their brains aren't fully developed. Okay. So yeah, they say some stuff that you're like, no, boo boo. But there's so much more to them than that. And they're part of this world, and they're affected by this world, and they're affected by these things. And I think a lot of their frustration and anger comes from the fact that we treat them as if that's not true. We treat them as if, oh, you're just a kid. This isn't your fight. This isn't whatever. This doesn't affect you. And they're like, no, it does affect me. And I get a say in this. And we're like, oh, you're just a kid. You don't get a say. So it's really cool for me, like in my classroom as an English teacher, I do debates sometimes. I call them mini debates, where I give them like 15 minutes to research a topic, and then we do debates about it. And the stuff that they come up with and say, I'm like, they pay attention. They know what's going on, and they care. They like have a say, but they are told constantly, you're just a kid. Shut up. Go sit in the corner and be quiet. And they're like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm mad.
Well, and that's awesome, because we need more teachers like you, because having raised you two, I know teenagers are their own breed, and there is no way that I don't even think I could teach 6th grade, even though I'm licensed to. But you giving them that place, that power to feel like they have a voice, they have a say. And I try and create the same kind of community in my classroom. It's just obviously at a lower level. But we see, teaching in lower income districts, that the cycle of poverty and abuse and just general crap and chaos continues. And it's people like us that are teaching these kids that they don't have to continue in that cycle, that they do have a say, that they have control to a certain degree, more than they might think they do, that will hopefully help a lot of these kids break that cycle and not end up in their basements. Like, I can't tell you how many kids I have, and I tried very hard not to chuckle, but I reference regularly with my students, like, I don't want you to end up living in your parents' basement watching Netflix all day. And they're like, oh no, we want to be YouTubers. Yeah, no, you don't. That is a glorified thing. And there is so much more out there for you. That is, I want more for you than to live in your parents' basement and be a YouTuber kind of thing. But giving them that voice within our classrooms, and that the safe spot to voice their opinions and to have those conversations, I think is important. And I wish there were more teachers like us to do that.
And I do want to say, I see where you're coming from, and I agree on some level. But I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with wanting to become a YouTuber. Now, if you are, there are people that abuse that, and they do live in their parents' basement, and they use their wanting to become a YouTuber as an excuse to continue to live there and be a freeloader until, they take off or whatever. But chasing that while also still being like a productive member of society, and like, taking care of yourself, and if you have a family, your family too, and like chasing that dream on the side, and just not harming, whether it be financial, mentally, or whatever, not harming anyone else while chasing that dream, because there's a lot of value. And like I watch a lot of YouTube. I don't pay for cable. I mostly watch with either YouTube. I watch a lot of science educators. There's a lot of great educational YouTubers, not just like prank, and I want to make pranks on people and make money off that and just be a nuisance. Like there's
That's what I was gonna say, Mom, is I don't know if this is the right word, I would challenge you to reframe that. And when you have those conversations with them, push their thinking, and say specifically, what do you want to do on YouTube? Because if it's something silly like, I just want to prank people and make money off of doing that. But if they're like, oh, well, I'm really into makeup and I want to help people learn how to put on makeup and feel beautiful and whatever, like, I feel like if you push that thinking more and push them to think beyond just like, I just want to be a YouTuber. Because I think even though they're young, they're fourth grade, like, I think you can still be like, okay, but being a YouTuber is not like a thing. You have, what are you doing?
Right. And
what are you,
What's your passion you're pushing?
that's right.
what
through
good are
YouTube.
you doing?
That's very, very true. And I think if I had students that replied with something other than video games, I might totally jump on board that. Like if I had a student that said, I want to, educate people on how to do better hair and face care and, explore that cosmopolitan cosmetology,
Yeah.
type of thing, I would totally support that. But I would say 99% of the time I get video games. I just want to play video games on YouTube and be like, everybody watches me play video games. So,
And that is definitely something that I used to be really involved in that, and I used to do a lot of streaming and playing video games online. And I don't know if that age they'd really grasp this, but it might be beneficial to, like, that's fine. You could, like, again, do that on the side, and if it takes off, good for you. Like, live the dream and play video games and make money off of it. But I think it's like 0.0001% of like all creators on any streaming or video platform like actually make money to live off of. So
Right.
it's like it's akin to like, I want to be an actor. It's like, great, chase your dreams, and like, it's that's awesome. You can provide entertainment for the masses, but like, just be aware that your chances of success are extremely limited.
right. Well, and that's one good thing is that I teach at an AVID school, which is advancement via individual determination. And so at the elementary level, we focus more on organization and keeping things more in order. But every year, actually twice a year, we have a college and career readiness week. And we talk about specific careers. And last year, one of them was I don't even remember what the technical name was for it, but like a video game developer. And they were like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. And I said, well, you probably need like some kind of partner or like whatever. And no, I'm doing it all by myself. And it was a huge eye opener for my students. So even just exposing them to that at this level, I think helped them realize like, yeah, I can't just sit in my basement and play video games and stream YouTube. So
It's not as easy
And
as
I
it
will
looks
say-
at face value.
right.
Yeah. I will say, quick caveat, I personally very, very strongly believe that teaching should not be anyone's backup plan. Because I think that that's a common thing, especially like for actors. They'll get a degree in acting with like an emphasis in theater education, which like, that's fine. But there's also other people that, like, I went to school with someone that wanted to be a lawyer, but he was like, oh, I'll just get my English education degree just in case the lawyer thing doesn't work out. And that frustrates me because kids don't deserve people that are sad about the fact that their dream didn't work. And so they're just teaching because that's their backup. Like, kids deserve people that went into education because they love kids, they love teaching, they care about it. So please don't make teaching your backup for anything. Thank you. I will get off my soapbox now.
Okay. And just because I've loved this conversation. We've covered a lot of good things. If it's all right with both of you, I would love to throw my wrench into this discussion.
Yes, go for it.
Bring it on.
Okay. So just as background, I was hoping to kind of present this to you both as we were recording, to kind of like, get those fresh creative juices flowing as to like how to react to this. But we had technical difficulties last week, and so you've had about a week to simmer on this. So I guess I'm a little more interested to see if you've thought about it at all, and what you've thought about in this time. But there is a tool that was released last week, I think early last week, so it's been almost 2 weeks, called ChatGPT, which is an AI that at face value, it's just a chatbot where where you just are supposed to be able to have conversations with it, and it acts like a person and has conversations with you. However, if you ask it to do tasks, it will fully do those tasks as if it were a person. And so people have been using it to write papers. I personally, one of my friends here who's a marine biologist, somehow she heard about it, which I thought was interesting, which shows kind of how widespread this has already been, that she asked it to write an academic paper on like sea clams or some aspect of sea clams that like she's really familiar with and she works with on a daily basis. And she was like, it was really good. Like it was very good. And then she was like, and then I asked it, can you turn this into something that's more digestible for kids? And then she was like, it did an even better job. Like, and like, it straight up just, it was completely correct and well written. And it can code, not like full programs. Coding is a different beast. Like, and it has limitations set on it. So if you're having a problem and you're stuck on a specific code, you can like put in your code and be like, this isn't working, why? And it'll just give you the answer. And it'll code it for you. It's not just going to tell you what the answer is. It'll tell you what the answer is and code it for you. And like doctors I've seen are using it to request medication and treatment from insurance companies because it's doing a better job at that. And it cuts off a ton of time that they no longer need to sit down and actually write letters. They're just like, I need this medication for this reason, write it from a doctor to insurance company, and it'll just do it. And so with that in mind, a lot of what I've heard of this potential changes that this could mean is writing papers in school is kind of going to be obsolete because there is no way to tell if it was actually written or written by this AI, because it's that good. Like, it is indistinguishable from a person writing it. And so if we can no longer give students papers to write, and this is negating the fact that like, well, kids get a lot of benefits out of writing these papers. Like, it increases their plasticity of their minds and whatnot. Aside from all that, because that like goes into ethics and whatnot. Picture yourself in school. You're on crunch time. You just spent your week putting off all this work. Like, oh, I got that paper needed to write. Write down the parameters of what the paper needs to be. Put it in. It just writes it for you. Good, you're done. You get an A because it's a really well written paper. Like, kids are going to use it. It is now out there. It will be used. And why is it fair, if you can't tell, for the students who actually care and want to write these papers and will, and then the ones that don't and still get the same credit? Like, it's safe to assume that just everyone's going to use this. And what does that mean for you guys from teachers' perspective? I wish I wish this was like the video was recorded, because your guys' faces are amazing.
I have so many things to say.
Go for it.
Okay, so as an English teacher, papers are a large part of what I do. So I have multiple thoughts on this. My first immediate thought was, this seems like, at least in the current situation, it will be more of a problem for college than for anything below college, because as teachers, we can tell what a kid's writing style and wording is. And so if they suddenly turn in something that you're like, this is amazing, it's going to be like, okay, you didn't write this. And I might not be able to pinpoint that like an AI wrote it, but I'm going to be like, you didn't write this. I've had so many instances in the past of kids that struggle with writing and then they turn in a paper and I'm like, tell me what this word means. And they're like, and I'm like, yeah, you didn't write this. Okay. So that's my first thought, is that at least right now, if it gets down to a point where like they're using it for every single paper and you never know.
And at new students
that's a whole
coming
different,
in that you
right,
haven't
that's a whole
seen
different ballgame.
Yeah.
But my solution for this, and I don't know if the solution is the right word, but my, idea is handwriting is still a thing that exists. Not everything has to be written on the computer. So have students handwrite an essay. They're not going to die if you make them write something on paper. They're not going to die. It'll be okay. And you can even have them write it on paper and then type it and make them turn in the rough draft. So you can be like, how did you get from this to this? This is not the same thing. So clearly this one came from somewhere else. So I think there are workarounds and I think it'll get harder and harder as this becomes more mainstream and more commonplace for kids to use this. But as it stands right now, I think there are things that we can do to make it so that I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Okay. Have you used this AI yet? Have you tested it?
No, I don't know how to do that.
Okay. Well, I initially liked your idea of having them handwrite it. However, what's stopping them from having the AI write it and then just transcribing it? That's still faster than coming up with the original concept yourself.
If they're doing it in my classroom when I can see them and I can say, get off your computers.
So, well, no, that's actually a good point. And this is like a plus for you, not a plus for the AI. I've heard a lot of input saying that like this could be the death of homework.
Which is fine with me.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I think homework is dumb anyway.
I think maybe mom's not. I don't know. Are you in agreement with that, Mom? I think homework's dumb.
I think if you have the support at home to do homework, that the extra practice is good. But if, as are the case of majority of my students who don't have that practice at home, that support at home, it's pointless.
Okay. And to your, and this is not like if it's written in class, but for this AI, you can have it write a paper, and then you could say, okay, can you rewrite that, but as if it were a rough draft, and it would do that. So like that one wouldn't really work.
I mean, I think you could also, and this isn't gonna work for all kids. It'll work for the good kids, the ones that care about their education, but having the conversation with them of like the purpose of writing essays. The purpose isn't so that I can read it and grade it and give you a grade. The purpose is so you're learning the skills of how to think critically, how to make an argument, and you could even talk about like how do those skills connect? That's not the right word. I can't think of the word. Whatever. Connect to the real world. How are they going to help you in other situations? Because a lot of times kids will be like, well, why do I need to know how to write an argument? And I'm like, well, have you ever tried to get somebody to do something for you or something like that? Like, have you ever tried to get your parents to move your curfew back an hour? Guess what you're using? Argumentative skills. Like,
boom.
So, but again, like for the kids that don't care, that they're going to be like, I don't care. But it's a way to help with some of the kids of like, hey, this is why I'm having you write this and why like using the AI is not beneficial to you.
Okay, so maybe like reframing of like the purpose of the content, which I think is already an issue. Yeah. Because like, especially with math, it's like, why do I need to know math? It's like, well, I mean, literally everything you've used in your life, because kids nowadays grow up with electronics. Like literally everything about your everyday life, even just sitting here in this room, is thanks to science and math and the ability to communicate that science and math, i.e. English, you know? So it's I think that we struggle with because I love learning, but
so do I.
But picture me in high school and middle school,
right,
and elementary school. Did I love learning? Did I love learning, Mom?
Not even a little bit.
Because it didn't interest me. It wasn't like, and I blame a lot of like I wasn't diagnosed with. Oh, funny. I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until like I think my freshman year or whatnot of high school, and it's funny because you didn't even know that, Mom, until like 3 years ago. Yeah,
a couple years ago.
Hashtag divorced parents.
Yep, side effect of divorced parents. And so like I do blame a lot of it on that because I really liked math. I remember geometry. I hated geometry. I thought it was stupid. And so like I think that was one of the only math classes I failed. And like you even were like, oh, Mr. F in math or whatever. Like because like that was the 1 year that like I just sucked at math. All the other years I got A's and B's, but geometry just did not light that fire in me. And so I didn't care. So I didn't do it. Or I would do it and not turn it in. I think it's difficult being an adult and trying to put yourself in the student's shoes because they're still growing, and like that version of myself 100% would have used the AI, hands down.
Right, and it's hard. Like you said, this is a problem even without the AI. Like it's hard to make kids understand that what we're doing in school isn't just for the sake of like, because I'm mean and I want to make you write an essay. Like everything we're doing has a purpose, and it's hard for them. And like you said, like you put yourself in their shoes. They don't think years ahead.
They can't.
They think about it in like a really general concept of like, I want to be a doctor, but they don't think about like, okay, everything that I'm learning right now in 7th grade math is helping me to get to that goal of being a doctor. And like having a teacher tell you, hey, this is going to help you. Like it doesn't click for them. And so it's hard.
You need to have those life experiences to look back on. And while life experiences as a child, like 18 and below, are impactful on your life in like a profound way, like, you know, your childhood and whatnot, like defines who you can grow up to be. It's in a controlled environment. Your life experiences are all within a controlled environment. It's not until you can view the world while being a free entity of yourself that you can really comprehend the consequences of your actions. Because like you do something stupid as a kid, your parents get mad and you get grounded or whatever, and it's like that's the gist of it. But like you mess up in real life, there are real tangible consequences that can screw you over for your entire life. And it's not until you are faced with those that you really have a perspective of like, oh wow, like everything I did up until this point like really impacts what could happen in the future. So yeah, it's difficult to get that past him. And having two younger people living with me as I was trying to help them, even trying to frame it in that scope of like, I understand, like I have been where you're at. I understand that what I'm about to tell you, you are probably not going to care about, and you are not going to accept it as reality. And I get that, and I hope you see that I understand that. In a way, I tried to frame it in a way to be like, I was where you're at, and I understand you're not going to absorb this information, but it's helpful, and it will help you. And I mean, I don't think it actually went through. Even like, I haven't been able to find a way to effectively communicate that, like, I know. I have been where you are, but it's, what do you do? I don't know.
You can't. They have to... They have to do their thing. Like I have told many of my coworkers dealing with teenagers and other stages of their children, like the hardest part of parenting, in my opinion, is when they're grown and on their own and you see that the choices that they're making might not be the smartest choices or the best choices, but you can talk to them, but you might as well not, because honestly, they're going to do what they're going to do, and they have to go through those things and make those mistakes and hopefully learn from them, and you can't do anything about it. You just have to let it happen, and that is very difficult.
I made a lot of mistakes.
But can we all have, and anybody that says that they haven't and have the perfect life is full of crap. So to get back to the whole AI thing, can I comment on that?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. So you may be surprised by my answer.
Okay.
The biggest takeaway from my whole master's program, and at the time I thought this is really kind of ridiculous, but at the same time, I am not a fan of writing papers for everything. Sorry, Cass, I'm insulting your English teacherness, but there are so many other ways to demonstrate your understanding and knowledge of something that students do need to have that skill of being able to write and communicate and all of that. But just writing an essay or taking a test, multiple choice or otherwise, is not the only way to assess somebody's understanding and learning. I am a huge advocate of, I wish I could do it more in my classroom, but it's limited, but doing projects, developing artistic representations of what they've learned, or some other method of showing their other understanding rather than just taking a test or writing an essay. So, and this came to me, I had to do this so many times in my master's program. So I'm not even talking about just the elementary level, although it is very appropriate for that, but doing all of these projects rather than showing, here, write this 20-page essay with at least 5,000 words and blah, blah, all this stuff. Like, that's not the only way that they can show that they learned and they understand. So my answer would be less writing papers, more demonstrating in other forms.
Okay.
And as an English teacher, yes, I agree with that. I think there's a time and a place for papers, and I think that no papers at all is not the solution. However, in my class, we do an argumentative unit, and instead of an argumentative paper at the end of it, they do a commercial project where they have to use ethos, pathos, and logos in a commercial that they create, and it's super cool. And yeah, they're demonstrating the exact same skills.
So this actually brings up a cool thing where I can kind of respond to both of you at the same time. So I like that idea. I haven't thought about that, and I like that idea of having it be like there be more ways to demonstrate your understanding of the knowledge. But in response to that, I do know like you can like if you're one of the ways this can be used is like a creative kind of to remove down creative block. And if you want to, instead of write a paper, have like create something from it or what other methods that you want to show your understanding of the topic, you can ask it to come up with those solutions or to come up with those. Or if like they're given like you need to make a creative thing, it's like, okay, well, give me like ideas of how to be creative given this topic, and like it'll output that. So not to entirely break it down, I do think that's a good idea, and there are ways to get around that. But just like that is something you can do, is have it. Well, as I was going to say, this kind of brings me over to what Cassandra mentioned. Some teachers that I've seen online have suggested that this tool will shape how education is done and stray from having students memorize answers and more of reframing education to be learning how to ask the right questions. Because personally for me, I feel I've made it fairly far in whatever organization I've been a part of for work, because I learned just being a techie, I know how to Google things. I know how to ask the right questions on Google to get the answers I need to solve problems that I don't understand. But people come to me to ask questions and expect me to get results on things that I have never touched in my life. But it's because I know how to ask the right questions to get the sources I need to learn. And I can see that being a reframing of like, here's the material that I just taught you. Here's what you need to create from it. But reframe like the scoring as to like, were the right questions asked to get the results that we are looking for to show that understanding of the knowledge. Because a lot of people think that this AI is going to overtake Google, because you're not going to need to Google anything anymore. You're just going to ask this AI to create something or to do something, and it'll give you the result, as opposed to needing to go through.
Don't we kind of have that already in like Alexa and the Google Home and all that? Like you can ask it.
No, those.
There's this.
So that with those like smart home devices or those like AI assistants or whatever, those are all pre-programmed responses or direct pulls from Google. So it'll pull from sources, and it will give you the same answer every time you ask it. With an AI neural network, it's a neural network, which means that there's like how the brains work, how it's like there's interconnectivity. It does whole calculations based on this pool of information it has, and it generates a response based on that. You can ask it to do the same thing twice, and it'll give you a different answer. It'll give you the right answer, but like in different ways.
Okay.
So it's not like a pre-generated response.
But wouldn't that, so from the way that I teach, I would think that by my students doing that and asking the right questions would be what I call using a resource. So like this AI cannot create a diorama for them, correct? But it can give them suggestions and guide them through the process, but they would still have to put it together themselves, correct?
Yes, if you wanted them to physically create something, I can envision ways to get around that. And this just goes right back to knowing how to ask the right questions. is you can have it list out all the things that would be required on the diorama, and then you can have it program a script to visually illustrate that diorama in whatever programming language you wanted, and it would visually show you what to create. So you would just be creating.
So you wouldn't be really doing any work. You'd just be doing what, or
You would
learning anything. You'd just be creating what the thing told you to do.
Essentially.
Okay.
So like that's why it's really difficult, because like if you didn't know that it had those capabilities, you didn't know that those were resources you could use, you would kind of be at a disadvantage, because you could have it like give you those things to put on there, but then you would have to like arrange it yourself. If you didn't know that, like, oh, I can ask it to make something to visually show me. Yeah, it's really tricky.
That adds a new kink.
Yeah, but it's still like, this has been out for like 2 weeks at this point, and people are doing crazy things, and they're still learning how to get around roadblocks in like getting a final result. And this is heavily dampened. Like the creators of this even said, like, there are some like we're putting like heavy brakes on this because it's advancing very quickly and faster than we can regulate, and unfettered AI can be catastrophic to our society.
Well, and that's just what I was thinking. Like, is this like a sci-fi movie coming true? And should we be concerned, not just educationally, but globally?
Yes, I definitely think yes. And I did a lot of research into OpenAI, which is the nonprofit that runs this. And on their website, they specifically state that we're advancing too quickly. And if there is any, like, there can't be competition in this space at all. And if there is, then we need to, or if something comes out that's better than what they are making, they're going to drop everything that they are doing and join that team and help kind of influence it into like a more controlled state, because competition in AI space is we're not ready. we're just not ready for that.
So I have one more thing to say to bring it back to the education, because I feel like we're
devolving.
Yes, and I feel like we need to kind of wrap this
We
conversation
do.
up. So one last idea I had that kind of popped up over the course of this AI conversation, because I always think of when new technologies or whatever come out that can very easily get in the way in education, that sometimes it's best to find ways to use it to your advantage instead. And something that came to mind specifically for me for English is using these AI generated essays as models. So have it create, or even have the kids go in and have it create an essay and then annotate it, pull it apart, analyze it. What did the AI do? How did they create this argument? Why is it so good? Well, you know what I mean?
Okay, I like that.
Make them analyze that.
I like
so
that
then
too.
You're like, oh, you want to do that? Okay, let's analyze it. How did they make this so good? How is this? Blah, blah, how did they make the argument? So anyway, just an idea. What?
I like these responses, and then I just think my brain immediately goes, how can I get around this?
And sadly, well, not sadly, it's scary that more and more people think like that.
Yeah.
What are the loopholes? How can I not? I teach my students to work harder, or smarter, not harder, but to still
what
think.
extent?
And that
to what extent?
Yeah. I use it in relation to like when you're doing basic multiplication facts, and then like instead of doing 70 times 5 and doing the 5 times 0 and all that, just do the basic fact and then add the 0 type of thing. Not like, how can you cheat the Social Security Administration or something like that. Nothing to that level. Just, use your brain. And if you don't have to do all of this hard work when there's another way to do it, but not encouraging them to take the kind of shortcuts and ways around that you're thinking.
No, we get it, Mom. We get what you're saying with they're smarter, not harder. Yeah.
Okay.
We got
But that doesn't mean that there's not a great deal of them that aren't thinking like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think it's there's different kinds. Everyone's different, but there are like patterns and trends and like how certain people think and whatnot.
I mean, I think all of this is kind of making me think that we're almost going to have to go backwards in education, because we're making this big push right now to do everything electronically. But like, if this is going to be a thing, then we're going to have to go backwards and be like, well, we're doing everything on paper now, because yeah,
I have heard that argument, but if you take it away, like if you take away that access at home, that now gives privilege to the people who can afford the technology at home. So the people with the technology.
Well, but I'm saying doing the stuff in school,
like only
on
in
paper.
School. So like in this solution,
by homework,
there is no homework.
Correct.
Okay.
That would level the playing field, definitely.
Because then you can.
I mean, I don't think that's like the best. I don't think that's the best solution, but I'm saying like, if it gets to that point, then we're gonna have to go backwards
until we can figure out how to deal with this.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll wrap that up there. I don't know if you had a book for this episode.
I don't, and I don't think we have time anyway.
Okay, can I just say a book?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome to the book corner now. We don't have a jingle for the book corner yet, but we'll eventually get there. No. We're still making stuff up as we go. It's fine. So there's a book called The Precipice, Existential Risk and the Future of Humanity. And it's kind of what I was reading that inspired me to want to create this with my awesome co-host and sister. It's basically a book that is underlying our current point in humanity as a turning point, and a point that we have never been in before as a species. It's just acknowledging the fact that we are advancing so fast, and we currently have technologies and the science to either propel ourselves into an amazing future or destroy ourselves. And we need to take a lot of information in mind and really take the time and energy to make sure we fly instead of fall. But like that is kind of like the whole purpose of this podcast, is what you do now is going to affect the future, and now more than ever. In the past, it made huge differences, but there is so much that is potentially catastrophic for the human race that it really matters now. Like it mattered before, it really matters now. And so to be cognizant of everything around you and seek the true truths, backed by data and not just what you want to be right. And so, yeah, I won't go too much more into it, but I highly recommend reading it. Very insightful. The author advises the UN, and it's a really good book. Very terrifying. Very terrifying at times, but good. And that's it. No ADHD corner, because my ADHD corner is basically
the same as last time.
Well, yeah, the AI. It's different AI this time. Last time it was art AI, and this time it was
the art,
literally everything else AI. AI is advancing fast, and that's the synopsis of that. And with that, like I think we're good to go. I could keep talking on this for like another hour or two, but no one wants to listen to that. So we're gonna cut it off here. Thank you, Mom, also known as Andrea Pope, elementary school teacher extraordinaire. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for asking me to be a part of your podcast.
Yeah, and don't forget that the present matters, and what you do today will affect tomorrow.
See you next time.